Farrah. Welcome to my show, Fix Your Reflection First. I have had a wealth of life experiences, both good and bad, like everyone, and the one thing I have learned is that I am wholly responsible for the results. As I have evolved to liking the person I see in the mirror, my life has changed for the better, and that is what I help those that I coach do too. Please tune in every week as I will coach folks, listen to stories of success, and give you the tips and tools I have learned to make sure what you see is something you love and help you fix your reflection first. Welcome to Fix Your Reflection First and Live Your Best Life Ever. I'm your host, Rhonda Farrah, and this is Transformation Talk TV Radio Network. Our program, Fix Your Reflection First and Live Your Best Life Ever, is dedicated to awakening hearts, minds, and most especially spirit to our innate power from within, our authentic power from within, the power to thrive and not merely survive. So wherever you are in life, if you are not living the life you wish to be living, the life you desire, perhaps the life that you dream about, you have come to the right place. And we are so happy that you joined us today as we explore how we may be more mindful and make better choices to living our best life ever. And today we have special guest Abby Havermann with us. Welcome, Abby Havermann.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Let me tell you a little bit about Abby. Abby Havermann teaches mission-driven, insight-oriented executives to unlearn what no longer serves them. A former psychotherapist and financial advisor, Abby is a skilled coach, trainer, dynamic TEDx speaker, and illuminator of the unconscious self-sabotage plaguing today's leaders. Great topic. Our episode description is, in fact, stop proving your worth and start owning it. And again, we welcome Abby Havermann to share some insights and some practical tools and advice for unlearning, removing all that is no longer serving us.
Sounds good.
How, tell us a little bit about how you came to do what you do.
Oh, well, I mean, I think that I was kind of born into it in a way. I think those of us that are seekers, if we really look back, we realize from a very young age that that's really what we were here to do. But as many, I took probably a circuitous route before, before the universe brings you to your knees and that whatnot, and you realize there's no other option.
Yes.
But even as a young child, I was always sort of somebody that people spoke to. I was always flapping my mouth off. My favorite topic was the elephant in the room. I just was always, I just wanted to talk about what's really happening, the truth, and I started my psychotherapy practice because I really wanted to have a room where people could, shed their shame, just lay it down and just be real and say what's really, really happening. And it can be okay. And so that's sort of how I got into psychotherapy. And then as, through financial advising and then back to my roots, started to learn about neuroscience and, dabbled in some ancient wisdom practices. And it became, really clear to me that I needed to get back to what I love to do and what I'm really here to do. And so that's when I opened my coaching practice.
Okay. TEDx speaker, and you did a TEDx talk and you spoke about worthiness. Tell us about that. It's quite a topic, worthiness.
Yeah, the thing that's so interesting about worthiness and what I love talking about this, and, maybe you can relate as well, but one of the reasons I love talking about this particularly to women and women of an era, the women's liberation era and all of this stuff, is that this whole women's lib thing was meant to empower us, right? And meant to say, oh, you can go out into the workforce now and you can do all the things and you're equal and all of that stuff. And so much gains from that, right? It was incredible. When my mother got divorced, she wasn't allowed to have a credit card in her name, right? So a lot of amazing things happened out of that, but we really missed a major component, and that was the conditioning of women for thousands and thousands of years up into that point, was that our worth was tied to the man that we had in our life, the family that we had, how well we cooked and had a home, and what good a mother we were, and how happy our man was. And even the commercial of that time, I can bring home the bacon, fry it in a pan, never let you forget you're a man. Do you remember that?
I do. I do.
I mean, it was like 10 years it went on, right? I mean, I was a kid watching TV, right? So this idea that you can be all those things, and we can be all those things. I'm not saying we can't or that we shouldn't, but there was this very unconscious situation where we began to feel like our worth was dependent on being all of those things. And so now, if we're conditioned to have our worth based on our homes and how well we build a home and what a good mother we are and all that stuff, and we're conditioned into feeling unworthy, now you put us all into the workforce and we have another avenue to play out our unworthiness.
Yes.
And behave in the exact same way. I'm less than, I need to kind of prove my worth, whatever. And somehow it's the powers that be that's empowering us to be there. But that's not where empowerment comes from. I always say you cannot bestow empowerment. Empowerment is generated.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter how much I tell you, all right, you can do whatever you want. You can be anything. You could do, if you don't feel it, if you don't do your unwiring, it don't matter what anybody says.
Right. That's absolutely correct. So I guess you agree that the worthiness, the authentic power from within, is an inside job, attending to what's in us. And I always say you start with the emotion. It produces a thought, and that creates your external world. So it's the inside. That's the crux of it. It's what's at our core. Speak to us about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, the title of my TED Talk was Women's Liberation is an Inside Job. And it is exactly to that point. It is, we can continue to talk about how we want men to treat us or what they should or shouldn't do. And we can continue to argue or complain about the advertising and how they make women look and what we're supposed, all of that stuff, right? But that's not what's going to move the needle. That's not what we can do. We can have every legislation in the world can go in our favor, but it ain't going to affect self-betrayal. If we continue to betray ourselves, it doesn't matter what the world is doing. So I'm in 100% agreement that it is an inside job. Like, when do we allow ourselves to have our feelings? And at the same time, not become victim to them, not become slave to them. Like, when do we begin to look inside and say, okay, listen, these are the thoughts I'm having. These are the feelings I'm having. This is the way my life is looking. I don't like it. And I've tried changing every other thing, gotten a new marriage, I've gotten a new job, I've gotten all these things. And I just keep winding up in the same situation with different people, different players.
Right.
So I guess I need to change. I guess I have to hold myself accountable to treating myself as worthy. And so, as I mentioned in the TED Talk, like, one of the most powerful things that happened to me was when I had this incident happen, and I asked myself this question: what would someone who was worthy do? Because I was looking at a text thread that of all the things that I had said. And when I got really honest with myself, they were things that I was looking for approval. I was looking for someone to take me under their wing. I was looking for them to say it was okay, right? And what ultimately came back was sort of a nasty comment. And it was enough to sort of wake me up and go, wait a minute, who are you to decide where I belong or don't belong? And I said, well, how would someone who actually believed in their worth, because at that time I didn't really, but I was aware that I didn't at least, how would someone who believed in their worth respond to this? And I realized, well, someone who really believed they were worthy wouldn't say anything at all because they wouldn't need to, right?
That's right.
They just wouldn't need to.
There's strength in silence. Silence is strength.
Yeah. And it wasn't a play. It wasn't a like, I'm going to be silent so that she sees my strength. It was literally like, no, wait a minute. If I want to be worthy and I want to, this is who I'm shooting to be, I gotta act like that person. I gotta stop groveling. I gotta stop hoping that someone's gonna see me or recognize me. I don't have to, I gotta stop proving myself, justifying my behavior, my actions. And in that particular instance, I don't think I would say anything if I knew. It would be like if you told me your hair is purple and you wanted to argue with me about it. I'd be like, all right, fine. If that's your belief, you can have it. I don't have to argue with you about it. But we don't do that when we're getting, our hooks are getting in things because we think that our worthiness is being attacked or our values being attacked. The only way you feel that way is if you don't think that you're worthy and valuable. Otherwise, people can say it you all you want. It doesn't matter.
That's exactly right. And, and that's the whole thing. Fix your reflection first. Look in the mirror. Who do you see? What do you see? Do you like whom you see in the mirror? And get real with yourself, because you're not going to be real with anyone else. And that is the worthiness to the self-love, the self-care. This is all what you're talking about, the self-esteem, as well as the self-awareness. As women, we're not taught that. So it's time to get real and understand that we are worthy. We're whole, perfect, and complete, just the way we are. So look in the mirror and understand that. That's a big message for women, a big message.
It is. And I think that, I want to add to this, and I'm sure you'll agree, because I've heard you on other podcasts and whatnot, that the other piece of this is how naturally duplicitous the personality is and how we are more than one thing, right? So a lot of times the message stops at, and I think this is kind of the empowerment message, is, oh, we're lovable and treat yourself as well and all of these things. And all of that stuff is true. You have to love yourself, but you also, in terms of being honest with yourself, have to be honest about the parts of yourself that aren't so pretty either, because all of that is just human too. That's all just human too. I was speaking with a client before earlier today, and she was talking about, something that was happening with someone in her life who was being dishonest. But the way that she knew they were being dishonest, she came upon dishonestly. So, we were kind of looking at that and like, yeah, isn't that crazy? The mind will go to, you did this to me, and we suddenly don't realize what we're doing. And of course, what we're doing is attracting all of these things that happen. So it's about looking at the whole picture and not being afraid to do that, right? Like in so many of us, not just women, but people in general, it's like, oh, we can't be imperfect. We can't be this. We can't be that. It's this ridiculous self-importance. Like, oh, really? You're the only one who's wow, you're very, very special. You can't make a mistake. It's ridiculous when we hold ourselves to those standards.
Yes, absolutely. And, if you've heard me on other podcasts and about dark nights of the soul.
Yes.
What was your dark night of the soul, and how did it change you?
Well, I always say, which bone-crushing humiliation would you like me to reflect upon first? The darkest night of the soul was my TED Talk. It was the night that I spent in jail. And I was a psychotherapist at the time. Like people's treatment was predicated on the fact that I would have my act together, and I was in jail. So talk about piercing. What I was going to say earlier too, this conversation about worthiness that's so interesting with women is that because of that women's lib movement, we all went out and we really know how to kick ass and take names in the world. And we look very good. You look fabulous. You know, I look fabulous. We really look like we know what we're doing and we know what we're about. And so it's very, very hard when you find a woman like you or me, you know, that is out in the world and has a successful career and is doing very well. When you tell them that maybe unworthiness is part of the problem, because they'll say, well, no, I'm not unworthy. That's not a problem. That's not a problem. We don't align with unworthiness because in one sense, in our intellectual mind, we know our value in our work world. And this was very much a part of my life then. You know, my value was attached to, I was a very good psychotherapist. I was very well respected in the community. And so when I had this happen, it pierced every part of myself that I thought was me. And that's when I really realized, oh, wait a minute. I have believed my whole life that I'm unlovable. That has been the belief that I have always had. And that is what led me to where I am today. That's it. Nobody else.
That's it. Duplicating the patterns. That's it. That's, as you said, it's the pattern is the same. It's just different players, different characters.
Mm-hmm.
And the other interesting part is we are the main character, I feel, in our life. And wherever we go, we take ourselves with us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. But like the pieces that are like and forgive and be grateful for the pieces of us that are maybe, you know, they got a few stains, they got a few mars.
So
and
what, right?
Oh, what?
Yeah.
So your dark night of the soul taught you how wonderful you were.
Well, it taught me both, right? Taught me how wonderful I was and how terrible I was all at the same time. Right? I mean, it made me realize, you know, the areas that I was not who I thought I was. Equally in as great as I thought I was and as much of a piece of shit as I thought I was. Mm-hmm. I wasn't any of those things.
Right.
Right? Because like you say, you know, I mean, it's we aren't our mind and we're not our body. We are our spirit. We are our soul. You know, and it comes in this human body with this human experience that is messy and this personality that acts out sometimes and, you know, does all these different things and is all of these different things. And can you love yourself through that? You know, I think that's kind of the biggest question. Can you love yourself in your human experience? And can you love other people in their human experience? And can you realize that we are all doing the same thing? Because there's so much division right now, you know, that nobody is really seeing. We are all doing the same thing. I was just writing about this. I went into an establishment that I frequent recently, and the person there, who I think would define themselves as a seeker, was talking about somebody else and said, "Oh yeah, you know, they're like us. They're good people." And I was just filling my water bottle, and I said, "Well, we're all good people." And she said, "Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. Like, but this is how we've been programmed, good and bad. Every single one of us has the same DNA. We all have the capacity to be a murderer. We all have the capacity to be hateful and nasty. And just because some people do or some people don't is not moral high ground. You know, like there's lots of different factors that come into that. But I personally, as a therapist, never sat with anybody who I could not empathize with. And I didn't have to try that hard. Mm-hmm. And I sat with people who beat their wives.
Yes.
You know, I sat with ex-convicts. And if we could begin to realize that we truly are one and there is no hierarchy, I think the world would change.
Yes. The world will change if everyone realized that we are more similar than different, much more similar than different. And, but why do we do that? Why do we continue to, we have that mindset. We're going to poke at why is that person not as good as me? Oh, let me think. I can think of 5 things. Okay. This is why you're not as good as me. And this is why I'm better. And that sucks when you think about it.
Yeah.
It sucks. Why can you easily come up with the negatives? I'll say the not so good. I say the good and the not so good. Okay. And we're good. We do that to ourselves too.
Well, we do it to ourselves, and that's why we do it to other people. If we could accept ourselves as whole, right? As all the things, then we could see other people as all the things too.
And it's okay, because it takes all of us to make this world revolve. So you work with leaders in business. Okay. So how do you, I like that the way you put that, you unlearn. I'm a remover. I'm a declutterer. Okay. I live
I need that.
Abby, I live for garbage day. Okay. And it is true. So how do you unlearn? I mean, you've been learning and leaders. There's plenty of people, whether they're leading the country, whether they're leading businesses, whether they're leading communities, they're leading themselves as well. So how do you get rid of, how do you shed, how do you unlearn what is not serving?
Yeah. Well, I think that there's probably debate around whether you can ever truly unlearn, or whether you can learn how to get your personality parts in check so that you have the ones that you want driving when you want them driving, and the other ones not driving when you don't want them driving as much. But one of the things that leaders, whether you're leading a home or a business or both, have a really tough time understanding is that we're conditioned to really operate from the neck up, right? Like just with our 10% of our prefrontal cortex, that thinking function. Mm-hmm. And that function has 2 files, good and bad. And it values logic. And it values practicality and, all these words that we grew up thinking is the best thing in the world. And frankly, the words that have helped us develop a lot of the technology and smarts that we have. But the problem is this it's almost like the smarter we're getting, the less wise we're getting, because we're not tapping into that intuitive wisdom. And we're not tapping into that inner knowing where all of the stuff that you and I are talking about naturally lives, right? So a lot of this has to do with, I always say that your serenity is the only emergency. That if you calm your brain and body down, well, now there's a fighting chance, right? If you take care of what's going on over there and I take care of what's going on in here, there's very little to argue about. And there's a much clearer picture. Possibility is now in focus of things that actually I have options, I have choices. And we're quieting the centers of the mind that are going around and looping in analytical circles. And so when you can do that, you can begin to observe yourself and look at the habits. And when I talk about habits, I'm not talking about, I need to meditate, I need to exercise, although those are all great things. I'm talking about the habit of beating yourself up when you don't do those things. Or the habit of telling yourself, you have to do this. You have, oh my God, that the habit of driving yourself and judging other people and all of these things. This must be unlearned.
Yes.
In order to find that ease and flow in your life, in order to lead with less anxiety and stress, and in order to be able to get into that place of laser focused action and have a team that's doing the same thing. So it's a process, but you have to be able to see that what you're doing is not getting you where you want to go.
And accept it.
Open to trying something else.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Now you know what doesn't work. I'm sure you've had this with clients too. What do you want? Well, I don't know. Can you guess? This is a conversation I've had with clients. Can you guess? No. Okay, so let's move on. What don't you want?
Yeah, right.
What don't you want? I want someone, a partner, a spouse, what, that doesn't treat me as bad as this person.
Yeah.
You got that. Found someone else, didn't treat her as bad. Treated her bad, but not as bad.
Not as bad.
That's what she wanted. That's exactly
That's what she asked for.
She asked for. And we will get, that's the power within us.
Yeah.
Once it comes off our lips, especially, and then write it. Ooh. So get clear, get clear on who you are as a woman. Get clear on who you would like to surround yourself with, influence, and who will influence and surround you. I mean, what would they call it? The tribe.
Right. The 5, what do they say about the 5 people closest to you?
Yeah. You're the product of the 5 people closest to you. Okay.
Yep.
So if you hang around with people that are in scarcity and lack, which we're going to get to on this question here, probably you're going to hit scarcity and lack. Tell me this story about someone's in scarcity and lack. So how do you convert them to abundance? And it's not just money.
No.
Not at all. That's the least of it, in my opinion. Money's good. I mean, I like nice things too. However, talk to us about that conversion process.
Well, you have to recognize your habits of thought and behavior that are expressing this emotion of lack, right? And so sometimes that's, what's the thought? And are you running around like a chicken with your head cut off because you got to go in this direction and that direction, and you're leaping from one project to the next, or you're coming down on your team. We've got to get this out. We've got to get this out. It's got to be perfect, depending on whatever proclivity your personality parts has when they get under stress. That's happening because there's some fear that there's some scarcity. There's something is not right. But if you adopt another perspective, which says, listen, everything in my life is a potential opportunity, a potential gift, or at the very least, it is. So fighting what is not going to help me. And so catching people in their repetitive habits and waking them up, because really, as we talk about, the mind is a machine, and we just go to sleep all day long in these habits. And you have to kind of wake people up and say, wait a minute, listen to yourself. What is the thought that you're having, and what choice is it causing you to make?
Yes. And
when you make that choice, what happens next? How do you behave? And what are you creating in your life? And that's really the beginning.
It is the beginning. It is the beginning. I don't want to leave here without what is the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm at abbyhavermann.com. That is with 2 N's, Havermann. All of my information is there, and there is an ebook on 7 ways to stop self-sabotage that you can download if you're interested in beginning to do exactly some of what I said, becoming aware of the emotion and the thought that creates the behavior that results in the outcome that you're not wanting to have right now.
And all of your information plus will be in the episode description for Transformation Talk Radio. This has been fascinating. So in closing, just whatever struggles or challenges we happen to be facing, we do have the opportunity, if we choose, to let all of it serve us rather than anything less. So whatever tunnel you happen to be traveling down these days, that light at the end is not a train. The light is the way, it's the guidance, it's the blueprint, and it's the opportunity to move forward and be the best version of yourself. Abby Havermann, thank you for joining us. I'm Rhonda Farrah, and you've been listening to Transformation Talk TV Radio Network. So until next time, have a beautiful day every day. And as always, I invite our viewers and our listeners to treat life as if it were ice cream and enjoy it before it melts. I'm Rhonda Farrah, and you have been listening to Fix Your Reflection First. Tune into Transformation Talk Radio every first and third Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific Time for success stories of folks I have coached. I will be sharing more of my tips and tools that you can use to love the person you see in the mirror and how to fix your reflection first. Live your best life ever by choosing to be bold and courageous, even if it means getting out of your comfort zone. To connect with me, visit helpmerhondanow.com.